I'm
Yeah.
trying.
Okay, the recording is now in progress. You can keep playing with things. I just don't want to forget to hit that.
Yeah. Well, I want to try to send this to my headphones. Okay. Do I hear you now?
I know when I'm doing the Discord or whatever, I actually have my headphone on one ear so I can hear my own voice.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. I can't set that to that. I don't want to set that to that because I want to use the good mic. I don't want to use the bad mic.
Uh, you might be using the good mic because it's coming through okay.
Check one, check two. Ooh, I'm real
That
close.
that 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 sounded like the right mic.
Okay, I do
Okay.
have the right mic. I can't seem to switch away from my speakers though. I'm hearing you through my speakers, which I'd rather not do.
Oh yeah, it's kind of weird. Okay.
It's not allowing me to do. And I don't want to do through my microphone because that involves plugging something else into my microphone.
You might want to go for the one ear on, one ear off method.
Yeah. I just want to have a little more nuance over what I was hearing so I wouldn't have to listen to, like, for instance, downstairs, someone's yelling right now. Like, what's going on with that? I don't know. Who knows what that's going Who knows what that's
Get
about?
some nice yelling. Oh yeah, that's the other fun part. The citizen came where you hear the cops come in.
You hear the cops come in.
Yeah, like we're in the middle of near the end of the podcast, and Luke's like, "Oh, that must be my doorbell went off. That must be a delivery." He comes like, "Oh no, it's the police." And then the police come in. It's
What?
he's like, it's just someone introducing themselves to everyone on the it's a new officer introducing themselves and I guess checking out his beat or whatever, which you don't see that in America, of course. That would
Oh,
that would cause incidents.
oh, yeah. Cops showing up suddenly can lead
Yeah,
to
right.
interesting interactions.
So they're like, "Are you gonna have to go bail him out or something?" I'm like, "I don't think so." But yeah, cop interrupted. No, I did the reverse of editing it. Not only did I not edit it, but I spliced in myself later saying I didn't edit it because it was funny.
Oh,
Because
oh, I
everyone's like,
finally found the audio settings. Sorry. Okay, now I can hear you
okay,
through. Excellent. I can probably tweak it again over here. So I'll hear you more better. And you hear me fine, huh? You don't hear any extraneous noises or anything.
oh yeah, it's been coming through fine the whole time on my end. So um,
Okay, see, like a professional podcaster, I actually have my own microphone, not
you have
just
it
some cheap headset.
in a stand, right? No,
It is
I
the
have to.
famous, Blue Yeti brand.
Oh yeah, yeah. See, I got the blue sphere ones, right? But my computer's so old and it doesn't need a driver. That's part of the marketing, right? Doesn't need a driver. My computer's like, where's the driver? It's like too old. It couldn't handle it.
Oh,
So my setup here is I have an external sound card plugged into the side of the computer with wires coming out that goes to an analog tube preamp that goes to this mic. It's like a really bizarre setup.
but
I
it's
don't
got
know.
that warmth, that analog warmth that we
That
all
That's right. The only problem
we
is
all
sometimes it crackles sometimes, which no one else seems to care. So I've tried to like ignore it, but like when I hear it, I'm like, oh, it's crackling. I hate that. Like see, I can't make it do it. It just does it sometimes. There, like that, I guess. Yeah, there we go. That crackle. I
oh,
don't like that.
oh, oh.
Yeah, and
I'm
it's
trying to
some.
look at my notes and your notes at the same time, but Discord won't let me.
No, that's fine. No, I honestly when I podcast with Mark, we always send each other notes and we never read them. So I guess we've it seems like polite to send them, but never read each other's notes anymore. Which, yeah, sometimes people do. Mike does. Mike will always spit stuff back at you from the notes, so that's kind of fun.
I think we made some similar observations, although I may have read your notes somewhere between my first and second watchings of the episode, so I don't know.
No,
Or if
I
it's stuck in my head.
no, I just pause every once in a while. Last night I was having a completely ridiculous watch. I was because we have to do the Human Centipede 2 podcast this week.
Oh no.
So I was watching like 15 minutes of that, and then 15 minutes of Buster Keaton, and then 15 minutes of the Centipede, and then 15 minutes of Buster Keaton. So that's an insane thing. And oh, the other fun one was family fun movie night last Thursday was Psycho. And then I come up to my room and watch The Rescuers by myself to prepare for a podcast. So I'm watching The Rescuers with
Rescuers.
this Disney movie,
Yeah, that was
1977.
a Disney movie. Yeah, I was trying to remember.
Yeah, it's for a Disney podcast. Yeah. So so I'm doing The Rescuers by myself and Psycho with the family. So
That seems
um
backwards somehow, but okay,
yeah.
I'll allow it.
So I'm gonna leave about a 5 second gap, and then I guess I will go ahead and start this podcast.
Yes, I will clear my throat. I don't know how you're going to introduce me. Here's some random guy who listens to my show.
Yeah, sure.
That's fine.
Hello, welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's where we delve into all of the episodes of The Twilight Zone and beyond. This is Matt here. With me today is a guy I talk about The Twilight Zone as much as anybody with in our live chats. So it seemed like a smart idea to bring him onto a show. Hi, Brian.
Hello, and
So,
good morning to you way over there across the ocean.
yeah. Well, we both got light streaming in the windows. So I don't know. It's been my vacation week, and I guess I'm getting old because like every morning this week, I just 5:30 in the morning, like it's also light. It's already light in Japan at 5:30 in the morning, so it's not. Yeah, that's the other reason.
I
But
think you're a little higher latitude than us, so you get those longer days in the summer. Is that true?
actually, I think I'm from my hometown's Atlanta, and I think it's almost exactly the same latitude. It's that
Oh,
we're to the
okay.
it's the longitude. We're to the east side of the longitude, right? So
Oh, within the time zone. So you're the first one to get the sun. I see.
yeah. So there's a few countries that are on like 30 minutes, right? They're not on an hour. I think North Korea does that for some reason, which doesn't make
This should
sense.
be contrary, I think. That
Yeah.
drives me nuts.
And then I think I don't know if they still do it, but I think Arizona too.
Well, Arizona makes sense because it's a desert. Those people don't want the sun beating down on them at 8 in the evening. They want it to go away. They just as soon sleep through the morning sun and deal with it that way. So there's some intelligence to that. I'm surprised more of the Southwest doesn't do that as well. But what can you do?
Yeah, one thing I've now been living 20 years without daylight savings time. So, yeah, boo to daylight savings time.
I've slowly become, when you're a kid, it's a great thing because you're off in the summer and then the sun is out later. And yeah, it's fantastic. When you become an adult, it's a kind of a different story. But then there's people who want to do daylight saving time 24 hours or 365 days a year, which doesn't make sense because there's no daylight in the winter to save.
Right.
So you end up waking up and it's 8 in the morning and it's still dark. And I think people don't appreciate what a problem that is. At least the people who weren't alive in 1973 when Nixon did it during the OPEC oil crisis.
Oh, is that when it happened? Okay.
Yeah, he tried to put us on daylight saving time in the winter, and everyone hated it. And I was going to school then, and I hated it. Going to school in the dark is not fun. And they made the argument, for the children, we can't have this happen. Children will,
I
be.
like real time anyway. Yeah. I live on real time, man. But this isn't
Yeah,
about light.
man.
This isn't about light. This is about dark. It's about
This
nothing
is
in the
about
dark
locally sustained organic time. Yes.
in a small apartment, underground basement apartment. I guess it's not really an underground apartment. You just dig a hole and put an apartment there, right? So,
Yeah. Didn't you say something? I'm getting ahead of myself, but you said that the apartment looked familiar to you.
oh, I do remember seeing it like in a different episode, and it was just like driving me a little nutty. Which one it was? Maybe with the penny one. I forget the title, but maybe it was that one. I can't really remember.
Oh, penny for your thoughts. Did that
Yeah,
any of that take place
maybe.
in a sort of a tenement sub basement or whatever? Because that's what
Yeah.
that set was.
Well, anyway, I didn't do the research to figure out which one it was. I just remember there's a kid in there for like the one scene, and then you didn't see him in the episode. This episode has no kids. It only has three actors, so I guess I'll trivia it up because it's easy when there's only three actors, or two, or one. One's the easiest, of course, but
It's more of a two character, one act play with like a third character coming along to, you know, push the story in the other direction.
right. For this one, the original air date was January 5th, 1962. Hello, 1962. George Clayton Johnson wrote the teleplay. Let's not forget he's also responsible for Logan's Run and Star Trek's first aired episode, The Man Trap. Gladys Cooper played Wanda Dunn. She was a powerhouse of the English stage around the turn of the century and later turned to film. There, she was Bette Davis's overbearing mother in Now Voyager and remommed for Rex Harrison in My Fair Lady. Harold Benton was played by Robert Redford. This is pretty early in his career, and I doubt I really need to explain his career for anyone. So instead, I'll just mention that Baby Matt's parents took him along to the drive-in for 1979's The Electric Horseman, and my folks still occasionally give me flack for what happened there. There was apparently an
Ooh,
incident.
there was an incident at the drive-in.
Yeah. The contractor was R.G. Armstrong. He was one of those Western guys showing up on Gunsmoke, Have Gun Will Travel, Wanted Dead or Alive, and the list goes on. He doubled down on Cowboys with Sam Peckinpah as an as unhinged fundamentalists and Ride the High Country, Major Dundee, and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. This episode, along with The Grave, were actually shot for season 2, but trickled down to getting aired in season 3, which is kind of weird because season 3 is so long. It's like,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I was going to say this is the longest season by one episode. It's like 37 episodes, which meant otherwise it would have been 35, which also seemed like an odd number because I think 36 is what they're aiming for. But the second season was weird with its budget cuts and its, the videotape episodes. They were trying to, and also it was ended up being several episodes short, I think.
Yeah. Well, and then you got the fourth episode, which is like, half, a double and half at the same time. So that's kind of fun.
It was like 29 episodes, I think. But why did they hold it over when they were short last season? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, I guess television just airs differently at that, juncture in time. Like I was reading, like it went to an hour because we got a slot this year for an hour. Can you go to an hour? I guess so.
Yeah, but they still ordered 36, the equivalent of 36 half hours. They ordered 18 1 hours. So there's the same number of production
Yeah, yeah.
hours, I guess.
Television math, always for fun. I have given you the prologue. I assume you can see this on your screen.
Yes, I can.
Okay, you can read it any which way you want.
Well, I'll guess I'll try to do it in the classic style. Let's see if I can do this. An old woman living in a nightmare, an old woman who has fought 1,000 battles with death and always won. Now she's faced with a grim decision, whether or not to open a door. And in some strange and frightening way, she knows that this seemingly ordinary door leads to the Twilight Zone.
All right, thanks. You didn't get some of the tomes we've been getting recently. Two people got like 2 or 3 minute long, things to read. So
Well, the worst I think was It's a Good Life, where he has to spend 5 minutes setting up the story. Is kind of bizarre.
exactly.
I don't know if my lip
So
was sufficiently stiff for that episode, for that reading. Submitted for your
it
approval.
seems dry. Dry is what you want, is from what I understand. I don't know. I'm not a pro at this because I don't read the prologues for the show. So I doubt I have a good impression to do.
Well, friends of mine from long ago used to say that Rod Serling just had no upper lip rather than having a dry upper lip or whatever.
Well, the teeth are dry, right?
The
So
teeth are dry, and it's supposed to give him that sort of, yeah, that's.
I have some trouble, I guess, connecting with the old woman here because I have trouble staying in the house. Like when I get up in the morning, I'll eat breakfast and I'll be like, okay, I'm taking a walk for an hour. And then maybe I'll like work on a few podcasts or something, have lunch. Okay, I'm going for another walk. Now I'm going to walk up the hill to the hot spring. So I don't know. I guess I like being outside more than inside. So,
Well, she has her reasons, as we slowly learn throughout the entire episode, that she's hiding. She's just been fearful of crossing paths with Mr. Death.
Yeah. And I kind of wondered like how her timeline worked out because she said she used to love to be outside, right? So where, when and where did the change happen? Was that the bus incident? Was that like a long decline or something? We're just seeing the bitter end of it or what?
The bus incident seems to be the catalyst that started her, but then she, said she kept seeing him in different guises all through her life until she finally landed in that apartment. But seeing him everywhere. And I thought, well, then why aren't you seeing him today?
Well, she is.
Right now. Well, no, she recognized him throughout her life. It's like, oh, that guy over there is Death. But then I guess when she didn't immediately, expire the moment she stepped outside to talk to to Harold, was his name. Um, the policeman realized, oh, well, I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, I don't
And then we
always.
saw. Go ahead.
I was just saying I don't always look ahead like at the one I'm gonna watch. Like obviously sometimes if it's like I know when a Shatner episode's coming or something like that. But sometimes like with the Mirror, I think I was watching it halfway through. Like, oh crap, that's Peter Falk in a fake a beard. It took
Oh,
me
you're
a
talking
few
about
minutes.
recognizing Robert Redford for who he was?
It took me, yeah. So when we first see him outside in the snow, I thought he really looked like Tim Heidecker from Tim and Eric. I would like I spent like a minute just like not like having this weird disconnect, feeling like because it's also a weird situation like on that show where he's like in the snow and kind of saying weird stuff. So I was
I guess there's some.
juxtaposing a Tim and Eric moment here.
I guess Serling worked with him once on Playhouse 90, and that's how he was kind of got in. But there was some back and forth on whether or not he was well cast or not. Some people think he wasn't. Some people think he was. So
In Playhouse
I don't
90 or
know.
here?
In this episode of The Twilight Zone.
Oh, I think this works because Death is a nice young man to take you to the beyond. And it works for me. Um, I did have a few moments where when I was still trying to work out what the Twilight Zone angle was. I mean, she's already dead. I was kind of going with the Sixth Sense thought and one thing, right? But
Yeah, yeah, I thought of that too. Yeah.
I was kind of wondering for a while if she was going to snap and go Kathy Bates Misery style on him. So that would be pretty dark. But hey, Twilight Zone can get dark. So
Well, if you think about it too much, all sorts of, thoughts occur to you about how this story unfolds. It's like, I mean, and jumping a bit to the end, he's kind of like, she was asking, why are you doing this? Why did you fool me? And it's like, he wanted to just ease her into it. He's trying to be as benevolent as possible and let her know that it was all okay and not just, snatch her soul or whatever she thought was going to happen the minute that they met. So
like a
yeah, so
dementia or something.
why you kind of wonder why the ruse, why they go through the whole thing and then there was the Sixth Sense possibility, like you said. I mean, it would have been interesting if after they stepped outside at the end, her body was out there the whole time and it was just her ghost inside talking to him. Have to eliminate the entire bit with the contractor because that wouldn't have worked. But
Yeah, that happened. I think I've even mentioned some podcasts before, but when my daughter is maybe 2 or 3, there's like a Hello Kitty cartoon, and it's based on a European folktale or something that I don't know, where the girl gets like obsessed with staring at the candle and like ends up freezing in the snow. So, and I'm sitting there
oh,
like, is this just like being snarky and joking? This is gonna end with her freezing in the snow, isn't it? And then it did with Hello Kitty freezing to death in the snow. Like, what are we watching? So this could have been along those lines, I guess. Yeah.
oh wow, wow.
I guess
um
they did not Disneyfy the end of the tale, but I guess when you're telling that kind of story, you can't really change the ending because that's the whole point of the thing.
Yeah, well, sometimes those, fairy tales or children's tales don't have happy endings, and that's kind of, the object lesson is this is what you're going to come across in life, kid. So there's going to be some dark things.
Seal. Okay, sorry, you don't know why I'm saying seal. I always confuse the seventh sign and the seventh seal. So seventh seal
Oh,
is well, they're pretty close titles, but they're very different movies. But yeah, that kind of came to my mind with this episode, just a little bit, and then kind of I noticed a few of the comments when I was having a quick look at the Internet Movie Database comments. I was like, a few people saw that too because that was a pretty recent movie at this point. That was, for a foreign movie, a pretty big movie in the States, I guess. So Have you seen that one?
Hmm.
That's the
No, I
playing
haven't. I haven't.
that's the playing chess with death movie. Of course, death
Oh,
is way creepier than that. Bill and Ted get back to him as well, right? So,
isn't that like Ingmar Bergman film or something from
yeah, that's
a
right.
long
That's
one?
right.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. It's it's one of those touchstones. Is like you know of it, but seldom do it has everybody ever seen that exactly where it came from. You just know of
No,
a certain aspect of it.
yeah, I
The
watched a
chess
few
game.
when I was in my film dork phase. I did watch a few Bergmans. That being the only one that was actually kind of enjoyable to watch, even though it's morbid, I guess. But I remember Wild Strawberries was supposed to be a masterpiece, and I just wasn't really into it because it didn't interest me. So there's a certain point where it's like I think I'll just start watching things I like instead of things I'm like supposed to watch, right? But yeah, that also has like death is something you confront, I guess, slowly and methodically, kind of like in this episode. There's lots of conversations involved. It's not like you said. It's not just a Dementor style soul snatching or something.
Yeah, and the whole question of how death personified works is kind of an interesting topic as you dive into. I mean, um, I don't know how long this particular. Well, we've seen it like a couple of times already in the Twilight Zone, right? There's been a couple of versions of death. One for the angels. He's coming for you. He's there for a purpose. Blah blah blah. But then you start to wonder, it's the Santa Claus problem, really. It's like, how can he be everywhere all at once, taking care of all the dying peoples who are about to, meet the afterlife? It's
The
like, how,
Santa Claus conundrum.
yeah, it's like Santa Claus has to be everywhere at midnight to deliver the presents, right? That's how it was supposed to work.
Well, my note is how do we know it's death? It could be Mr. Pip. I guess he's more of a Satan, right? So
Well, is he like omnipresent? He's just everywhere he needs to be all at once, or is he like he got like a franchise? He's got multiple deaths out there doing all these things. That's what I was kind of wondering about.
maybe you
But
conjure your own death. That's her personal death because she always
her own.
recognizes death, but he always has a different face, right? So that could be other people's deaths.
Oh, oh, oh. Well, then we enter into the whole, uh, did she go in the Twilight Zone or was she just crazy? Which a
See,
lot of things can apply to a lot of people in the Twilight Zone. It's like, did they just have an episode, a mental episode, and none of this actually occurred?
I thought you were about to throw at me the like, hey man, it's like the green I see, like the green you see, man. I thought that's where we're getting. um,
No, but I
but
was thinking about various personifications of death, and probably the most famous one in fantasy today is the one started 30 years ago by Neil Gaiman in The Sandman. His sister, Death, who's a goth girl, goes around doing pretty much the same thing, seeing people off and stuff. And I wonder how much of that, can harken back to either this episode of the Twilight Zone or even earlier precursors of a death personified.
but before we really break this one down with questions, I think both of us, because I got a glance at your notes, and both of us were trying to work out how this apartment works, or this tenement, which I guess it's a tenement apartment. You can use both because it seems the windows have been broken out, and it's the middle
Yeah.
of winter, and yeah.
Well, that plays into your Sixth Sense idea. Like maybe she was already frozen to death long before this episode even began, because her windows are wide open in the winter and it's snowing outside. How is she even surviving? But then she said the gas man came around, so maybe he had questions about her excessive gas usage and heating her apartment or something.
Yeah, I got my little kerosene heater right next to me, which I don't quite need today, so I guess that's nice. But
You have a kerosene heater? I don't know
yeah,
if you'll
yeah,
allow that in America.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
an
yeah,
internal combustion device inside your house.
yeah, exactly. I have to sometimes go outside and pour in some gas and bring the fuel cell back up here, and yeah.
Oh,
Um,
good gosh. And
but
that's got to be producing CO2. So yeah, I assume you have a CO2 monitor nearby to make sure your CO2 levels are okay or your carbon monoxide levels are okay.
Oh, yeah, that's a good thought. I mean, it's not gasoline, right? It's kerosene. So, um, but yeah,
See,
Japanese buildings rarely have like central air, especially like houses and apartments. They don't usually have central air. So I have like a wall unit heater slash air conditioner also in here, which
Wow.
I didn't have for. Yeah, most of the things in Japan, there's these units, like on the top, near the top of the wall that do hot and cold. That's the
Well, it's not
electric
to say
version.
that's unheard of in America, but I think in modern America, there are codes and things where some of those things aren't allowed anymore. Like you can't build a wood burning fireplace into a home, at least in California anymore. Like they outlawed it just because of the pollution.
That's where I was wondering about her apartment a little more because I know I'm from Atlanta, which it gets quite hot in the summer and not that cold in winter, but everyone just cocoons themselves. They live in a bubble of cold air during the summer and a bubble of warm air in the winter in their house, right? But whereas in Japan, it's like, no, you have to experience the seasons. So when it's summer, you know it, and when it's winter, you know it. Like it's pretty cold in the house in winter. Not like her apartment cold, but pretty
It
cold.
an enforced engagement with nature, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, yeah. They Japanese like to say we love nature. Maybe that's why. So
So yeah, back to the window. It's like the question was, well, why isn't there a blanket or cardboard or something covering the window to keep the cold out? And the answer was, well, the audience need to see what was going on outside that window.
yeah, yeah. There could have been a little glass, but I don't know. So
But we didn't really see much. We saw, the police officer or Mr. Death creeping around out there. And then we had this whole little play where you hear gunfire and he falls down, and I think you hear sirens, and you're thinking, this has got to be all for real, right? But then it finds out later it's not. And it's like, well, did he have accomplices? Did he have firing a gun just to make it sound like it, or did he just manifest those sound effects out of nothing? I don't know.
maybe there was a completely different tableau out there, and there is a dead police officer out there. So
Yeah, I thought of that too. Maybe he is, well, the reanimated corpse of the real dead police officer, and then later on it's like, excuse me, I gotta slip out of this body now. But
oh,
we don't get to see that part of it.
that's getting a little bit. But again, I guess her sense it takes her a while to sense this guy, which is weird because she says in other cases she could do it quite quickly. So
Well, maybe
maybe
that was the reason. Yeah.
yeah, I guess because it's for her. I would just think of people's vibes and recently the lady I try to avoid at the 7-Eleven. Uh you know,
Oh,
just the vibe. It's like weird. It's like there's it's not like the service is better. It's just talks in a voice that just I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable. So when I'm in the line, I'm always hoping, gee, I hope it's the other clerk. I hope it's the other clerk. So yeah, I don't know what it is. So, but yeah, there are some people where you do just pick up a certain like vibe from them. So, and maybe in this case, I guess it's like a death vibe. Uh,
well, that was my question. She could sense it all through her life except today, when it
right,
was
right.
actually happening to her.
But I
It's
guess
kind of,
that's because that's for her. You don't recognize your own death. I guess I don't know. I don't know exactly what her
oh,
motives were
maybe.
there.
Oh, yeah. I
How
am
do
for
you?
Captain Kirk. Oh, sorry, I was
Oh, that's
flashing.
good. Uh, um, do you think? How do you think the contractor dealt with this situation, trying to get her out of there? Because he wasn't like overly aggressive, but he's a little aggressive. Did he? Was that a good balance? I don't know.
Yeah, he seemed like he was under the gun. He said he had an hour. He literally had an hour. They were going to knock the building down, and was trying to everything he could to convince her. What I found weird was the kind of bonk bonk on the head speech soliloquy he gave about the need for change and death is a natural part of life. It's like, this sounds like something that Mr. Death himself would be saying, but it's not. It put like that metaphor into his talk with her to, I don't know. It's almost like it was set up to say that just to kind of help her along. Like, did Death know he was going to say that? I don't know.
Synchronicities, man. Well, I definitely thought the episode was playing a few minutes where maybe, like, I thought maybe the contractor was the death to claim
Well,
the police
yeah,
officer, right? So could have been that.
that's the reason he probably said all that to help convince her that this is the real deal here. But in the end it wasn't. So you're kind of left wondering, well, why did he say all these things? In this sort of, like I said, bonk bonk on the head, well, everything dies, lady, sort of stale. So it's like,
It's like the philosophical mechanic, right?
yeah, he's working on your transmission and telling you about, the meaning of life.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was going to mention something. I don't know if you picked up on or from the very beginning, and I haven't seen anybody mention it anywhere. It's the fact that when she first wakes up, she's looking through the back of the chair, like you're looking through the bars of a prison. She's kind of holding on to it, looking to see what's going outside. And then when the contractor is talking to her later, she does the same with the bars on the back of her bed. She's facing the camera and literally holding on to the bars like prison bars. And it's like, well, another metaphor. She's kind of made a prison for herself
Well,
in
that's what
that
she's
room.
complaining about, right? Because she's like, I
Yeah.
used to go outside and now I'm stuck in here, but I want to keep living anyway. So,
And yeah, another sort of prison metaphor you see all the time is like the prisoner in the cell, and this one shaft of light comes in, and that's where he's sitting to appreciate, what little sunlight he has in his dark world. Well, then she does that scene where she reaches towards this patch of light on the floor when she's talking about her youth. And I thought, oh, that's nice. But then also it implies, is there like a big hole in the ceiling over her head? Where's that light coming from? I assume it's coming from the window, but who can say? If she's on the
hey,
bottom floor, she couldn't be having a ceiling with. Well, she said the building's abandoned. Maybe there's light coming through all over the place, but it was kind of a conveniently placed patch of light there for her to reminisce about
I mean,
sunlight.
there might not be much of a building above her anymore, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. We don't know how dilapidated it is. Never get a full look of it.
I just, this thing, you might have seen a picture because I did post in the Discord where I walked from this inn we were staying at, and alongside of a mountain was just like this weird half or more than half broken apart, like concrete behemoth. And I stared at it for like 5 minutes. I'm like, I cannot figure out what this used to be. I was like, maybe a road used to come through here. I was like, no, that's not it. It has all these paintings, and that looks like it used to be a room. And anyway, I asked when I got back, I asked my father-in-law about it, and he was like, "Oh, I think that used to be a hotel, and halfway through demolition, they ran out of money, and it's just been sitting there for 30 years."
How
Because
strange. I'll have to go find that picture now.
weirdly it's an Epicurean thread, so because I put it in with the food photos, but yeah, I was just like literally for 5 minutes, like what am I looking at? It's really big, and I have no clue what I'm looking at. So I haven't that was kind of a little bit of a Twilight Zone experience because I just couldn't logically be like it was broken up to the point where you really could not clearly tell it used to be a hotel, and it was all concrete too. So it was just like, yeah, massively confusing. So I like to think that's where she's living at this point.
So not like primitive ape man confronting the monolith in 2001, but close. It's like,
Yeah,
what is this ancient structure? What could it mean?
and it was massive. It was really, really big. I was like, yeah, just couldn't work it out. And then I was looking at maps, and I was like, okay, ruins. Maybe I can figure out what it is. But on top of the mountain is actual castle ruins. So obviously that's what gets all the press, right? Because that's like a
Oh,
samurai castle, right?
so you couldn't Google the answer to your question.
Yeah, I couldn't because it would just
Oh,
it would just tell me about the historical castle, which probably is more interesting in the end. No, I don't know. I was pretty interested in the bizarre dilapidated concrete structure. So
like
um,
military complexes have the weirdest ruins, and they're mostly concrete, like you said. It's like a radar installation or something from 50 years ago. That's always strange to come upon when you're exploring.
yeah, that's the stuff that was going through my mind looking at this thing, and I could not work it out for my life. So I and yeah. So anyway, that was a tangent. Did you have any other big observations you wanted to toss onto this episode?
Um, let's see. No, I mean I mentioned some of the directorial things. I listened. Did you listen to the commentary track to this episode with the director and I believe George Clayton Johnson?
Actually, I did not. What did you get out of that?
Oh, well, a lot of it found its way into the Twilight Zone companion, I think, because it probably came from the interviews that he did
Oh,
for the
okay, well, I
book. I
did
don't
see it
know.
there. So okay, got
Yeah,
it from
so you
there.
probably saw it there. No, just comments about was Redford really well cast for it. I think in the end, people kind of lean towards the fact that he was, even though he was a little green behind the ears as an actor. I think he'd only done a couple of things prior to this. It was kind of awesome, though, is that you had such a heavy hitter with Gladys Cooper, of all people, who, spoiler alert, is going to be on the Twilight Zone again and was on television all through the 60s and the 50s, too, before she finally passed away.
When I
And
was doing my trivia, though, she wasn't lying. She did used to be quite a looker.
she did, yeah. And then I liked your remomming joke, and she was in My Fair Lady as Mrs. Higgins. Funny thing is that apparently she was in a TV version of Pygmalion, which is My Fair Lady, about the same time. So she went from like doing Twilight Zone episodes and I'm going to do this TV movie Pygmalion. Oh, somebody must have saw her in that, so they cast her with Rex Harrison in My Fair Lady. It's like she couldn't get away from that role. She kept playing it for a couple of years there in a row.
Hey, nice to have a few good acts to your career, right?
True.
I was just gonna read my last two notes. You'll go along with this Robert Redford, but I bet you would not go along with Winter Soldier Robert Redford. He's like, come with me. It
No,
might be not be
that's
into
the
that.
bad Robert Redford. Everybody thinks some kind of more of the how many years between this and Butch Cassidy? I guess
About
that was kind of
10.
his breakout role. Was it 10? I thought Butch Cassidy was late 60s.
Double check because I think the Wild Bunch is 69. I feel like Butch Cassidy was after that, or maybe I'm thinking of Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Yeah, my brain's rupturing on that too. So,
Butch Cassidy was 69.
oh,
So
okay.
it was less than a decade before
Okay,
this.
yeah. But yeah, seeing him this young is weird. But yeah, I do think having such a fresh faced death is a pretty good idea. After last season's Art Carney Christmas episode, I was like, oh, this is kind of like a really bleak Christmas special, right? I wanted this to have just a hint of Christmas to make it a Christmas episode. That would be a perfect Twilight Zone Christmas episode, I think. Going gently away with death may have a Merry Christmas. That's some Twilight Zone.
Well, going back to the question of, are you fated to die at a certain time, or can you avoid death? I mean, this is one of those she's, trying to cheat death situations. But if there's some sort of grand scheme, was that the reason he was able to take, an hour out of his busy schedule to help her along, or what?
I've heard this is mystics and stuff, but the idea that you have like there's 5 times in your life when you have an out and you subconsciously make the decision if it's time to go out or not.
Oh, interesting. What was that from?
I'm not quite sure. It might have been a previous podcast guest or something, to be honest. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting concept. And the idea of people dying young, it's like, well, they took the first out. So I mean, it's kind of morbid. Like I said, it's mystical stuff, right? So it's obviously you're talking a little bit differently in those terms.
Wow. Yeah, I'm thinking of like people who make not so much, life or death situations, but good or evil decisions about their life. Like they could have done the right thing, or they could have chosen to do the wrong thing, and then they have like only like 3 strikes before they
What's
meet
like
their
right?
consequences, right?
It's like I got sick once, but now I'm okay. So maybe that's one. I was on that cliff. I could have slipped off that cliff. I guess that there's a moment, right?
Oh wow. Yeah, do you have any moments like that?
Oh, the cliff one was an actual story.
Oh, you actually came close to falling off a cliff? I came close to drowning once a
This
long, long
actually
time ago.
this actually is in California, maybe a little north of St. Louis Obispo, I think. And my friend's friend was like, let's go on a hike, and we're walking down the beach, and the beach is getting smaller and smaller, and eventually, now we're just basically scaling 10 feet above the ocean and rocks, a cliff with no ropes. I did turn around and take a picture. That was an analog picture because it was 2003, so I don't have the evidence of that at my parents' house, but it's like, well, I could die here, but I should at least get a nice picture from this. you know but
Oh
yeah,
wow.
it did
But
seem
did you actually
wildly safe.
slip? Were you like in danger of sliding off that cliff at some point?
I mean, if I had gotten the wrong footfall, yeah, sure.
No,
But
I thought you had actual scrape, like you slipped, but then caught yourself on a route just before you're going to go over the.
oh no, it's more like just wow, I really shouldn't slip down from here. that sort of thing, right?
Oh, okay. Because the story was I fell off a boat in a lake and wasn't wearing a life preserver, and there was a nearby boat had somebody there who was, a better swimmer than I was, who grabbed me and took me out of the water. That was pretty scary.
But the idea being like maybe if we go with that 5 times theory, she's at her last time, right? This is the point of no return. She's got to cash in her chips now with Mr. Chips. Is Mr. Chips the one that kills you? I don't remember. Of course, I got questions.
Questions.
3 people in this episode who went through the Twilight Zone. It seems like a silly question when there's only like really
Well,
one
yeah,
character.
the Twilight Zone in this case kind of came to her, right? If the supernatural element was Mr. Death, then he came to her, and the contractor was oblivious to him. So I don't know if you really can say he
Well, he
was
made that
in.
speech.
He didn't make the speech, and like I said, it was kind of weird that it echoed everything that was going on with her, almost as if it came to him from another place.
But if this is how death comes to us all, does that make it a Twilight Zone? Does that just define the Twilight Zone as death?
Do we all have that experience? Does Robert Redford come to our door at some point or in some form?
Does he age? What Robert Redford's coming to your door now? That's why I brought my Winter Soldier comment. But yeah, I mean, I guess like it's clearly her. I'm just saying, is it so normal that we shouldn't call it the Twilight Zone? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, that leans into one of your podcast's other questions, is how trippy it was.
Okay,
I mean,
I guess we'll hold off a minute on it then, if you want.
Oh, what what who came to the Twilight Zone? Or
Oh,
was it a Twilight
I
Zone?
was saying, can we even define this as a Twilight Zone if it's something we all commonly share? But yeah, I don't know. Which also seems to negate the does she deserve it question. Although I'll ask it. Does she deserve her trip through the Twilight Zone?
Yeah, it's kind of an inevitability, right?
Mm.
If we accept death is inevitable, then I wouldn't say she deserved it, but it it was inevitable. It was neither deserved nor undeserved. It's just life and death. How do
I
you how would you say it?
Well, I was just gonna say like, okay, she was about uh I did sorry. I guess she was about 72 or something when she did this. So pretty old. She looks older in the episode. Maybe a little makeup, maybe actually being old, maybe the fact that it's 1961 when they filmed it. Um excuse me. And wow, I just lost my train of thought by saying all of that. Okay, I feel she deserve it, deserve it. Oh, I'm just saying, like maybe she should have died 10 years earlier. I was trying not to call her old because in Japan we have like 90-year-old, couples that are still out farming every day. So you can live old, right? But maybe
Oh
she's
yeah.
past her expiry date, is I guess what I'm getting at. Like she
Well,
should have
did
taken
she
the last out.
successfully? Yeah, did she successfully delay her passing by secluding herself?
Yeah, it seems like she's basically barely been living for the past 10 years or more, right? So
Well, then I guess she kind of, punished herself. Like I said, she's like metaphorically in prison, the whole bar metaphor thing I mentioned. So she just imprisoned herself.
yeah, I guess in that case, this is death as a relief, right? So does that make this a positive outcome of the Twilight Zone?
Well, it's interesting because when she was made aware of the fact that she had passed away, and we don't see the logistics of this at all because we're kind of seeing it through her eyes, I guess, but she finally takes his hand and then he looks over to the bed and she's somehow her body is on the bed, right? It's like we didn't see like her soul depart her body or anything like that. It's just kind of like maybe she had died moments after the contractor left or something. I don't know how we're supposed to interpret the choreography of the scene, but my main point was and I'm going to lose my own train of thought about this. My main point was after she looked down on her body, she smiled, and I thought, man, if I had any sort of out of body experience, death or alive, I'd be freaking out at that moment. It's like,
Oh,
what's my body doing down there?
I since I have done some practice at vivid dreaming, lucid dreaming, that sort of thing, I have on occasion checked the astral iPhone or the astral clock. Like there's been a few times where I check the clock and it's like, oh, it's only 5:30. I can sleep in there 2 hours. And I'm like, wait a minute, that wasn't the real clock. You can't trust that clock. There was there was one where I checked my iPhone, right, and I was looking at the news and it said someone like not that old had like famous person had died, right? And then about 3 hours into my day, I was like, wait a minute, I need to check that. And it turned out that that was not the real phone. So I haven't looked back on
Oh,
myself in
okay.
these situations, but no, it is like definitely like I'm seeing my room, all that sort of thing, and doing stuff, and then I realize that I'm actually still lying in bed with my eyes closed, so I can't trust the stuff I'm seeing, or can I? I don't know.
Mm.
The time on the astral clock is usually pretty close to the real one, so I think I
Yeah,
just
I'm
have a
not
good
much into
internal.
how that works with lucid dreaming, so I couldn't really speak to that. But
Well,
uh,
I'm calling that a mundane out of body experience, I guess.
oh, okay.
The mundane version of out of body experiences. So I haven't done cool stuff. Well, actually, recently I've learned more and more, maybe because of the subconscious, I much prefer a good vivid dream that I can remember to a lucid dream. Because I've had a few lucid dreams, like, well, what am I going to do now? I think the last time I had a serious lucid dream, I was in this building. I was just like, well, I guess I'll start looking at like mirrors and sinks because that's kind of trippy in the dream world, right? I mean, that's not that useful though, is it? I don't know. It's like I'd rather have my subconscious give me like a rip roaring story for my dream, you know?
Well, I guess we're gonna have to have a whole separate discussion about dreams and how they work because I I rarely remember my dreams. I'm kind of the person who until fairly recently I would just, my dreams would kind of evaporate the moment I open my eyes and I can recall much since occasionally I can remember them beyond, 2 minutes after waking up, but not that often. So
You write down a couple words, something like just like 2 words that'll jumpstart your memory later. That helps sometimes. Um,
well,
but
once in a
yeah,
great while, I'll remember them like weeks later. I'll have this weird flash and I'll go, what was that? Oh, I think that was a dream I had.
right, right. I remember once or twice, like, mixing up my dreams with reality, unfortunately, where I'm supposed to have like a meeting with my boss or something. I have the dream meeting, and then I forget that I haven't had the real one yet. So,
Well, that raises another possibility that maybe this was a dream. The whole thing was a dream. She was been lying on that bed for days, and she just had that whole like, weird dream before she
yeah, that's
expired.
kind of what I'm getting at. This could be a kind of like half, like coming in, like in and out of consciousness. Like we can't really trust what parts of this are real because the last part, I mean, I guess it's real, but it's not. It's in the metaphysical world, obviously, that last scene, right? So, how much of this is
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
metaphysical world and how much is not is interesting. And sometimes I spend my mornings that way. Is what I'm getting at.
Well, did you notice that the lights in the room dimmed as they stepped outside? So it's kind of like drawing the curtain on that
Yeah.
entire existence, metaphorically or
Another
metaphysically.
one that I know I've mentioned on my Twilight Zone podcast before is a few years ago during a holiday, being in the big countryside family house, old school Japanese house, right? You know,
Hmm.
getting up from the tatami room, walking over to the breakfast room, starting to have breakfast, and boom, I wake up in the tatami room, walk over to the tea room, start to have breakfast. Boom, it happened again. It happened like 3 times. It was like insane.
Oh, he had like a Groundhog Day dream.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And a couple times when I have had the lucid dream, I'll, maybe I know I need to go to work, so I'll wake myself up from it, right? And then go to have breakfast and have, it's have you have 5 minutes having trouble working out that this is reality, So I can see where this episode could kind of, play around in that gray area some, that twilight zone, if you will. Um,
Well, the way it's written, it does lend itself to various interpretations. So you can do that, and we can apply other scenarios to it. The sixth sense scenario, the dream
well,
scenario.
I guess we'll tripometer it then. Where would you like to place this on the tripometer?
Oh gosh, this is always such a hard question because how trippy something is usually a measure of, how unfamiliar you are with the concept. And of course, Twilight Zone's been around for 60 years and influenced so much media. It's like, oh, death personified. Yeah, been there. done that. But this is one of the earliest examples of it. Um, there were 2 episodes of the Twilight Zone, I think, prior to this one that were Mr. Death came around. What was the other one?
You mentioned the Angels.
There was like one in the second season too.
It's not like I
Oh, I
have
could go
lists I could
cheat and
look
look
at.
it up.
But well, if you where do you want to number it then? Throw a number on it, I guess, or not. You can throw a sound on it. That's what Luke sometimes does, right?
What does he throw on it?
Just a sound like a or whoa,
Oh, whoa, or whatever. Yeah,
yeah, something like
I'm
that.
probably not gonna.
You don't have to do that.
Oh, the Hitchhiker.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. I shouldn't be looking at my season 2 list
Much
then.
more sinister take because he's like stalking her, like
But
you
he's
just
still pretty
stalking.
chill.
He's
He's
very
not
chill, but
violent.
he's creepy as heck. Just showing up on that was more trippy, I think, than one for the Angels. He's up front, he just says, I'm Death, I'm here to get you. This then he's just like stalking Ingrid Stevens across the United States. And this one, he comes to the door and kind of, finesses and, fibs his way in as something he's not. So it's probably the less trippy of the 3 that we've seen so far. I don't know, I give it maybe a 2. It
Okay, yeah, sure.
doesn't seem super trippy.
I was thinking along those lines. Like I said, I was almost like this could have been a Twilight Zone Christmas episode, a dark one, but it could have been the Christmas episode, right? Which, hey, if it aired a week and a half earlier, it would have been. So, but
Almost.
that means I guess I don't think it's quite as trippy. So I was thinking it too. But now that we're talking about how much of this is in, weird dream space or in the beyond already or whatever, because of that, I think I'll go ahead and call it a 3. That gives you enough fuel. But yeah, it is the third death episode. Maybe that's why it's the third death episode. Because I'm thinking the Hitchhiker, I'm pretty sure I gave something like a 4.5. That one's definitely trippier. One for the Angels? Which one? Because of
Yeah,
that weird dream or otherworld territory in this one, I think I would actually call this one trippier, and I think I gave the Angels a lower score if I remember. So
it was pretty straightforward. Yeah, so maybe Hitchhiker would be a little higher for me, and then One for the Angels be a little lower.
yeah, I think I gave Hitchhiker, like I said, like a 4.5. I found that one to be very trippy. So if someone goes back and finds that I gave it like a 1 or something, sorry, I don't remember my tripometer scores. They're subject to change.
Yeah, if trippy means disturbing, then yeah, if it makes you viscerally like, oh, it's creeping me out, then yeah, you can say it's a higher number, I guess.
Well, that's the whole point of the question, really. Like, I'm
Right.
curious what other people think is trippy, because once you start asking people every week, like you find, oh, what people call trippy varies quite a bit, which is kind of the point of the question. I guess we are wrapping it up today. Do you have anything you want to share with folks that you got going on the internet or anything's?
Well, as you well know, I'm just one of those hangers on over at Mission Log. I'm less of a celebrity and more of a potato peeler there in the Discord, hanging out, swapping memes. So if you're a Star Trek fan, you might want to go look into Mission Log if you haven't done so already. And once in a while, I first got involved in it. I used to call into the show when I could, but the live show they have on Mondays when there's new Star Trek. So who knows? Maybe you'll see me there again someday if my schedule permits it, but currently it does not. Um, and yeah, I guess we'll just keep talking Twilight Zone over there, and
And we do that every other Sunday for interested parties. And if you want to join in,
yes,
who
if you
knows?
join that, you can if you can come in every other Sunday. This is obviously not that Sunday because you have to actually make the podcast.
Yes.
And who knows where I'll turn up next.
As for this, it is Time Enough Podcast. It's Time Enough Pod on Twitter and Facebook. Although it's weird, I use Facebook more, but if you were to talk to me on Twitter, I'd probably be faster to respond. So weird. On Patreon, we're Podcastio Podcastius, where we do way too many podcasts. There's Films and Filth, where we look at the top 100 and the bottom 100 films on IMDb and alternate them week by week. So,
and I might turn up there too. Who can say?
I don't know. But yeah, you have to deal with 1 week the Human Centipede 2 full sequence, and then the next week Citizen Kane. That's how we run on that podcast. So a lot of whiplash for your mind.
Are you saying this is the Human Centipede of podcasts, or are you saying it's the Citizen Kane of podcasts?
Oh, that's a Citizen Kane podcast. Come on, I gotta be classy. No, I definitely don't want to have the Human Centipede podcast. That means you have to be like creepy and disgusting, I think, which hopefully I'm not doing too much of. I don't know. You can, listeners, you can tell me. We also talk about Disney films that are called Disney and look for the mysteries, the magic behind the mouse. I don't know if I said that right. I never do. There's some video game ones with Luke Loves Pokemon, talking about Pokemon. The Hyrule Field Report, looking into the world of Zelda and the Game Show, which is gamers gaming themselves about games. I rarely show up on those because I'm not a heavy gamer. But if you are, you might dig it. Oh, there's a knock at the door. I'm going to go check who's there. See you next week, maybe.
Play us out, Matt.
That should do it. Okay. I found long silences is the best way. Again, when you're doing the Citizen Kane for edit, I just tried to go like edit point, but that didn't work. I couldn't find it later.
Well, nobody mentions the fact that you cap an episode with a piece of your music, and I was supposed to say, "Play us out, Matt." That should be your catchphrase. Play us out, Matt.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Oh, I was thinking I was like playing Out of Life because I was going to go answer the door and Death was going to be there. So we'll see how people work that out.
I'm sorry, I didn't go along with your metaphor there. I was
no, that works too. Both ways work. both ways work,
which is always fun to listen to.
That's yeah. I'm just seeing.
I'm thinking of other things I could have mentioned now. Oh well, it doesn't matter.
that always happens, right?
Because I was thinking the title sounds very poetic, Nothing in the Dark, but I can't find a reference to anything that alludes to it. Sterling likes to borrow quotes from poetry all the time, like "I shot an arrow into the air," things like that.
Yeah.
But George Clayton Johnson. This one may be unique to George Clayton Johnson. The phrase "Nothing in the dark" that isn't there in the light.
Right.
You never go into the ending narration. You do the beginning narration. You don't touch on the ending narration very often.
Yeah, I'll never remember probably. So I think there was once or twice where I had them do the ending, but yeah, I don't know. I definitely thought why there were reasons I did that, and I don't remember what they were.
There was something about it. Oh yeah, the first line of it sounds like there was an old woman who lives in a shoe.
Oh, right.
That's what struck me as weird about it. It's like there was an old woman who lived in a room, like us all, was frightened in the dark, but who discovered in the minute last fragment of her life that there was nothing in the dark that wasn't there in the lights were on. Objectless in the twilight zone.
I'm looking at my film list now, which you said I'm looking at the paper when I printed weeks ago, so your name's not on. It's on the computer. It's just not on the paper list. You're doing. You said Arabia, Lawrence of Arabia, right?
I was trying to pick something that was going to happen this year because the list filled up very quickly.
No, Arabia and the Avengers. That's cool.
The Avengers, yeah. I said let's do Avengers because I hadn't seen it and I want to see it, and I think it would be kind of fun. And it's funny that's in the worst 100 films. I don't even know if it was that bad. I guess we'll find out when we see it. Well, but then I figure I should pick a good one too. So Lawrence of Arabia was the one. They're like, okay, let's do Lawrence of Arabia. Why not?
It'll post this week. But yeah, Speed 2. We're like, well, it's not really bad. It's just the leading man sucks, and it's an underwhelming sequel.
There was no Keanu. That was its problem. That was its crime.
Yeah. But if you want to watch a boat, scrape along a oil tanker and then take out a seaside village, I mean, that's worth watching. It didn't really have CGI so much. It was, some actual carnage. That's worth a few moments of your time. But
I think the idea was they took the central conceit about not being able to slow down and tried to apply it randomly to some other, a medium. It's like, okay, water. Okay, we're a boat. They can't slow down. It's like, why though?
But then, yeah, next week we're doing Singing in the Rain, which I've never seen.
Oh, and see, I like that movie. It's fun.
I doubt I'll dislike. I've just never watched it, right? And I'm sure we'll have to talk
It's
about that.
delightful. It's wholesome.
And we'll have
Like most 60s musicals.
we'll have to talk about the Orville episode as well. I sent Luke and Mark an email telling them you need to watch that Orville episode because they haven't watched the Orville, but that I'm sure that's going to come up. So
Let's see. You sent me that list at some point. I'll have to pull it up now. No, that's not it. Oh, that's not my home directory. Maybe it's in my home. My file system's gotten so out of whack since I last upgraded my system. The files are just everywhere, and I don't know where anything is anymore. What's the name of that file?
I think it's actually called Films and Filth.
No, it must be in the download directory. Let's see. Look under F. E F. No, I don't know what I did with it. I know you sent me a copy. I looked at it.
Well, it's in. I sent it to you in the Discord, so you can get it again if
Oh,
you
it's
need
probably there too.
it.
Yeah.
For a while, when I was out and about and I needed access to the list, I would actually just like the most easily accessible was the one Mike sent back where he had highlighted the movie. So I just like, but it was that was the fastest way to look at it when I wanted to. So, yeah.
Well, how's your let's see, related comment. How is your Space 1999 podcast shaping up? Oh, there it is. Yeah, it was.
Yep. We just recorded the first one. What was there's a I actually suggested doing the second one to Mark today or tomorrow, but he's busy both days. And then there's a blackout on podcasting next weekend for those guys because the new Zelda game comes out. Because
out.
I tried to do Singing in the Rain this Friday, right? And they're like, no, that's Zelda time.
So it says Mike Richards is Singing in the Rain.
Right. I think both of them are gonna come on. So I think we're gonna that's why I was like telling the guys, you must watch this Orville episode. It will
Mike
come up.
and Mark. Oh, because Mike's there.
And I think Jessica's gonna be there too. So because she actually requested it. Mike requested it first. I was like, well, I can still give her the link, and it sounds like she's actually gonna be there. So we'll probably
yeah, crash the party. Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, I noticed that this list was kind of like Mike, John, Mike, John.
Well, they were obviously the first people to respond. So I think since the list we're not going to do this till after Star Trek Vegas because she's busy, but it looks like we will get Dr. Aaron McDonald on for 2001 A Space Odyssey, not the Space Travesty, which we've done.
Yeah, you're lucky, Dr. Aaron.
Well, some people respond when you email, some people don't. There's people I'd really like to podcast with who just never respond, right? So, and then people who you're like surprised they respond, who I've now done like multiple podcasts with. So,
yeah, but you actually get like scientist, communicator, celebrity types. That's pretty cool.
yeah. Because in the past we did Interstellar and Contact with her. So
yeah, I know. I've seen them, and I still have the podcast. It was a while I did my podcast.
And kind of disappointed. I remember we were disappointed that we had already done 2001 for that podcast. So, so it's like, oh, now we have to do it again.
Now you're revisiting it. Good
Films
plan.
and Filth. And since then, I've read the book. We talked to Daniel Richter. So when I do that episode, I'll probably splice in the bit where we talk to him about 2001.
You talk about the book, or are you going to talk about the book? I have a copy of 2001 back there.
No. We might talk about that. I was referring to, and I do recommend this book, by the way, if you have not read it. Hold on, I need to go to my iPad to find the guy's name. I had the same. again with Sis and Kane, I'd read a very good book, and I, at some point, it's like, okay, I'll have to just focus on my iPad for a minute and like find the author's name so I can credit it properly because I'm just regurgitating stuff he said, which will probably be the same on this one, somewhat. All should be an easy cover to find, except that all my covers are now like in different places because I have a new iPad. Oh no, that wasn't it. I have an insane number of books in my Kindle here. Oh, here it is. It's called Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick, Arthur C. Clarke, and the Making of a Masterpiece by Michael Benson.
Oh,
Michael Benson. So, and that's the making of. So lots of pictures. I actually gave Luke a physical copy for Christmas after I had read it. Mine's digital, but
it's so funny is one of the first, I probably the first science fiction book I read was a copy of 2001 that was in my cousin's camper when we went camping one summer because I was like kind of up at the lake and a little bored, and so there was this book and I sat down and read it and it was kind of like mind-blowing experience. And that's just reading the book, and then I didn't get to see the movie until a few years after that
I
when it
didn't
came
really
on
start
TV.
I didn't really start reading sci-fi until like maybe 3 years ago or so. Before that, I just never read. I'd read science books, but I'd never read like science fiction.
Oh.
But then I was reading a bunch of Star Trek novels. I read all the Foundation Asimov books and a little bit of the robot stuff. So I haven't read much Clark though. I do have it on here. I just haven't
Yeah,
done
because
it
I,
yet.
I I read that, and then I started immediately reading all the Arthur C. Clarke I could find in the library, and then I branched out into Asimov and Niven, and then, of course Star Trek was a concern because I was watching it on TV, so I got the Star Trek books, and that's how it all kind of exploded, played out.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if as well. Oh yeah, I don't know if Vonnegut counts as science fiction or not. I mean, I guess sometimes it does, but a lot of times it doesn't.
But in reference to the making of the movie, there was a book that Clark himself wrote called, I think, Lost Worlds of 2001. Have you ever read that? It's probably long out of print, but I think I have
I might have it on my
an
Kindle here, to be
old
honest.
paperback copy of it that even I haven't probably read all the way through.
Anyway, I'll need to Clark a little harder at some point in time. But yeah, I definitely recommend that Michael Benson book. That was quite good. But no, a few years ago we got Daniel Richter on. We were talking to him about Magical Mystery Tour, right? Because he was basically John and Yoko's right hand man for 3 years. Like
Oh, okay.
just spent all his time with them, as like help
Wow.
out. So we brought him on for Magical Mystery Tour, but I was like, again, we'd already done 2001. I was like, okay, we have to have one segment where we talk to him about 2001. So if you get the monkey on, you got to talk about it.
Well,
And
I gotta dive back into that.
we were maybe lucky to get him because it was shortly after the lockdown started, and he's a serious traveler, so he was sitting there like pissed off that he had to stay in the house. He was like, I was gonna go to
Painful,
Spain.
those people. Yeah,
But
we're travelers.
because God, who else can you talk to who is involved with that movie anymore? He must be one of the only ones left.
A good person, I think, that you could talk to about science fiction in general, fantasy movies, genre stuff, and specifically Space 1999 would be John Kenneth Muir. Did you ever read his book about Space 1999?
I don't believe so. The thing with 1999 is, I mean, about 15 years ago, I get stoned and watch season one episodes, right? So that was my thing. I haven't even seen season two. So kind of like the prisoner thing where I'm not really, like super immersed in it. So I'm like going to immerse myself now. That's kind of how I go. Like Twilight Zone. I mean, I like Twilight Zone quite well, but I'm not like, I didn't start the podcast being like an expert on it. My thought is
Mm-hmm.
it's more entertaining if the people talking about it have some newness to them. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't have that person come on, just as the host. That's kind of my mo. Like, and with films and filth, you might have heard Luke say a few times, I'm a sci-fi guy. Now we're doing film, so I'm out of my box, right? But I think being out
So
of your
you
box makes it
prefer
more interesting.
more casual amateur I'm vaguely interested in this. Let's talk about it. As
That's
opposed to, I'm a scholar who studies Space 1990.
right, exactly, because like one, there's like a Star Trek podcast. One, there's too many, and I guess now I personally know people that do them, so I wouldn't do that anyway, right? But like like maybe I know too much to about Trek, right? Or like a Beatles podcast. That I don't think I would do that. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. If things I know a lot
Yeah,
about, I wouldn't want to podcast about. So
I wouldn't yeah, have him on as a regular, but I think John, has a lot to say about Space 1999. And again, Films and Filth would be probably a better place to put him because he's a big film buff, and so he would probably
oh, send
uh,
send me a link then. That one's because that one is more guest heavy. The Space 1991 I was basically like, well, I know several people who are really into it, so I think I'll invite them. So everyone that's been invited to be on that one is on the Discord, basically. Uh,
so let me guess, John and Norma are in that list.
and Earl.
And Earl.
Yeah. And that's pretty much. I'm not really seeking guests for that one, but I thought it'd be like half of them. Basically, there's 24 in the first season, right? So half of them will have guests. Is basically how it's going to work out.
Oh, okay.
I can hold on. I can bring up that list if you're curious and tell you who's coming for what.
Sure. You mentioned some that had been grabbed, but you didn't say who grabbed them.
Right. Oh, I actually put in my podcast folder. How smart. Okay. Speaking of having weird
Oh.
file systems, not where I keep all the notes for the podcast, but in the actual podcast folder. Uh, I found the font, so I made the list with the font. That was kind of fun.
Awesome. Which one? There's like two different fonts. You're
The
you're
one
one font or you're two on.
I wasn't that ambitious. The one that was already on Microsoft Word. I did go out of my way to find a Village font, and there's one episode of that podcast where I
Oh
basically
yeah.
can't read my notes.
I I sought out that font. It's like a modified version of some, obscure font. I think they
Yeah, yeah,
modified it.
yeah,
So
yeah. I did the research
yeah,
before
I don't
that
know if
on
I
that.
still have it anymore. I'd have to go dig it up again, but I did have it at one point.
Oh, there it is. It actually was there. I just didn't see it. Okay. It was in the first place I looked. John requested Black Sun. Earl requested Earthbound. Um, Earl requested Last Sunset, although he said he's already done a podcast about that. But I was like, I don't care. I haven't heard it. John wants.
Yeah, Earl's got his own podcast scene. He's done all sorts of things over the years.
Uh, no, actually, John was planning to just stick me somewhere. No, Norman asked for a couple specific ones. He asked for Dragon's Domain and War Games. So,
Hmm.
so I will. Since we've only recorded Breakaway, I guess I will ask you this question. This is another one like The Prisoner, where it's got insane orders, right? So
Oh yeah,
my
the
first thought is to just
order
follow
controversy.
the mega set box order, which is different than some other ones. So
I think that's my box set distilled down. Is that Blu-ray or is that
this is
see?
still DVD. So
Yeah, if you look back here, there's a row of them. I think
mm,
oh, maybe it's covered up. I got a bunch of crap up there.
no, the
The
first
A ones. Yeah.
so this one of course it starts with Breakaway because you have to. Matter of Life and Death, Black Sun, Ring Around the Moon, Earthbound, and Another Time, Another Place. So, because I did notice that the ones Norman asked for, if you go broadcast order, they're somewhat early, but if you go DVD order, they're somewhat later. So,
What man? What is about the British? Well, same thing you said about Twilight Zone. You look at the production order, just in season 3, and that's all over the map. They aired
then
things
yeah,
like
but then
crazy.
Twilight Zone it really doesn't matter, Whereas something like The Prisoner, it's like drives people insane because I think that's fun. I think that's one of the more fun things about the Prisoner is that it it actually does drive you insane if you really want to think about it.
There's like the fan
Yeah.
club order, and then there's like some public TV station in Canada's order, and it's like
Yeah, we
all
kind of decided.
definitive orders.
You said you listen to some, so yeah, we decided random number generator, not just for the episodes, but for the scenes. Scenes just come in random order. I don't know if you listen to the one that
I've
uh
listened to all of those.
the
You're almost done now, right? Once
we're
upon a
almost
time.
done. Yeah, once upon a time where we end up just screaming nursery rhymes at each other at some point. So I mean, you kind of have to, I think. So that one's very unhinged. I still don't know who wrote that episode because Mark kept correcting himself over and over and over. The
I thought
wikis
McGowan
changed.
wrote it.
Well,
Well,
I
every
think that's
other
correct.
episode is a McGowan a
Um,
pseudonym, so you never know.
I believe that is correct. It was just funny because like yeah, we I think we went half insane recording that episode, so that was exciting. As you
That's sort of the
should.
point. Yeah.
That's the point of Once Upon a Time, I guess. And then yeah, next week is
The
Fallout,
great absolute.
and then we did a 30-minute episode for the prisoner puzzle. It's so short because I think we figured out the problem was Mark's VPN was on, and it would just like if it was just me and him on Zoom, it would like keep cutting the connection. I thought it was on my end, right? And in that
Oh,
episode, we got cut off like 3 times, and at the end, we were just oh god, abandoned ship. So the edit you can't tell, right? I edited it, did it right,
it did.
but it's shorter than it was meant to be. Like Mark was like, I think I still had something I wanted to say, like you did, except he actually was going to say it, and we had technical difficulties. So, but have you watched that interview before?
Which interview?
The Prisoner Puzzle. It's from 1977. It's on Canadian public television where Patrick McGowan is in a panel discussion or like a it's like a small
Oh,
there's
no.
there's like 10 people in it or less in the audience, and I think he
Wait
yells at
a
the
minute.
audience a little bit, so yeah.
Maybe if it was like on PBS or something, I may have caught
It
it
was on
during
like the
some media.
Canadian version, so they might have aired on American PBS at some point, but it's basically one of the only times that he talked in any
Yeah,
detail about the prisoner. So
yeah. I guess it's infamous because he's so tight-lipped about it. He doesn't really want to discuss it
I
too
mean,
much,
honestly,
does
you
he?
don't learn. It's very interesting with him pointing out, yeah, some of these connections people are making. That's just they're making connections. There wasn't. I mean, that's cool, but none of us were thinking that.
I think
He. I
he's
thought it
trying
was funny.
to make something like that so allegorical and detached that you can do anything you want with it in your head canon.
My favorite part is when he, I guess, can't remember the name Penny Farthing and just refers to the stupid bicycles. Like he's like, people were trying to put meaning into the stupid bicycles, but they're just there. But which
Oh.
I don't know. Anyway, it's that's worth chasing Fallout with, of course, because you got to make a bit of sense out of that, right?
It reminds me, so Alexis Canner, who was, in the Western
Living in
episode
harmony,
and the fallout at the end,
right?
he claims that Patrick McGowan explained the series to him and what it all meant. And then J. Michael Straczynski claims that he heard what Alexis Canner had to say about McGowan's intentions. So, and I think Canner is dead now. I'm not sure, but I think Straczynski kind of holds himself out there as being like, yeah, I'm somebody who knows what it all means. And I'm like a little skeptical of that. But at the same time, he has such integrities. He's well known for being a straight shooter and, normal, go to the mat saying Joe Straczynski will never lie about anything. It's like, well, I'm not saying Joe Straczynski lied, but maybe Alexis could have made up a story about what it was all about and told it to Joe Straczynski. So it's kind of interesting. It's all out in Twitter somewhere. If you can dig back far enough in Straczynski's Twitter feed, you might find it.
Well, that's why I
Very
was interested in the Alex Cox book as well, because his theory is pretty out there but interesting. Like I don't really agree with it, but I found it fascinating. Have you
oh
read his book?
no, I got a couple of books about the prisoner. One, I don't know if we discussed this already. I have this big hardcover that I believe was originally from a French book that was translated, and then I got the prisoner companion from the 80s because everybody was writing companions to things, like like this guy.
Right. Yeah. No, this
So
book was only written about 6 years ago. Alex Cox did what Repo Man Sid Nancy. Just maybe you know that, but just to so it's like a filmmaker. But
I
yeah,
remember Repo Man. That was a weird film.
yeah. So and Sid Nancy is a very disturbing one. But it's like a legit director wrote this book, and
Hmm.
he's talking about he like you've heard me mention a few times on the podcast, like maybe Six isn't a spy. So his final theory is that Six is a rocket scientist, and the British are trying to rush their space program to beat the Russians and the Americans. So the village is a project, and number one is the rocket, which the Fallout sort of alludes to, right? So
Yeah, it
and
literally
and
was a
and it's
rocket.
he's like when you see the monkey, it's like sending animals into space first, which Burgoon has a different take on that in the prisoner puzzle. So, but he was like, oh yeah, well the thing that says one, that's like a mission patch, right? Because and he's there to launch the rocket in the end, which is what he does. So
That's funny because I'm sure Magoon would say, I never made those connections, but that's the connections somebody made. So they spun it out of what I put down. So that's interesting.
and then
That's an interesting thing.
there's the DC comic from the late '80s, which has a completely bizarre spin on it, which I guess Six goes back to the village and squats there.
I have that comic. Oh, it's
Yeah.
it's it's in this closet right here somewhere. I have that
Yeah,
comic.
Shattered Visage, I think is the name of
Shattered
it.
Visage.
Visage, yeah. So, yeah, it's one of those words you read and never say, isn't it? But like, it was an interesting read, but I definitely was like more into the Alex Cox interpretation than that one because that one's kind of bummer. Like he just, yeah, that I don't know. And I didn't read the one from a few years ago, but I heard it was.
Wasn't it kind of like this? He had this, intended destiny of becoming well, in Fallout, he kind of did become the leader of the village. He was basically told, well, you beat us, so now you run everything. And then everything goes wacky with the Beatles and whatever.
I mean, the one that works best is basically Magoon was concerned about the surveillance state and warning that Russia was going to become a surveillance prison, which London basically sounds like it now is. I mean, Tokyo is too, right? my buddy
Everything
Scott
it
has
kind of
eyes
is.
looking everywhere, so I feel nice in my rice fields. No one, well, there could be a spy satellite, I guess, but I don't feel very surveyed up there. So, speaking of which, I guess I'm gonna go hit some rice fields and I'm gonna go hit watch the Guardians movie tonight with the elusive Maddie. We've mentioned him so
Oh,
much on podcasts. I think people think that we made him up as a character, but he's a real person.
I was going to ask you before you go a musical question.
Oh yeah, sure.
Were you into Vangelis very much? He reaches for something off camera. Oh, all right. Yeah, I
Yeah, I got
got
the
all those
70s stuff
too.
here. One of them's
Eh,
Tangerine Dream, but that makes sense.
Well, as you may or may not remember, my last episode of Sci-Fi 5 was the Vangelis episode that aired at the end of March. And one of the things I dug up was the fact that he was in this young, Beatles-like group in Greece called the Formings. So I got a hold of this,
Yeah, yeah, okay.
which is basically they only put out singles, but somebody compiled them into first EPs and finally into this single disc. So this is like the entire discography, I guess, in one book. But since it came out in Greece, of course, it's all filled with Greek newspaper clippings and stuff, which I can't.
I assume you've gotten to this one.
No, that's my next step. Yeah, I haven't gotten to that.
This
There's like
and
others.
their first album are quite good. This one's like a double album. This one goes on forever.
There's like what 5 o'clock, and that one, and the third album, the one in between, I think.
Yeah, so the one in between is they try and do like country folk rock, and you want to hear them doing insane psychedelic bombastic crap, right? So I
Oh, so
figured.
skip that one. Okay.
I mean, you could. I mean, yeah. It's
Being
it's
a
it's
completist, I'll probably find it. But yeah, I was gonna
exactly.
hit the
But
Aphrodite's Child stuff, specifically that one. A friend of mine's loved that album for ages. I've known about it for a long time, but I never actually acquired it. So, but anyway,
but
I
yeah.
thought the Four Minks was kind of a weird chapter of his history that I never knew about until
Oh, there's
fairly
lots of
recently.
weird proto versions of bands. Was it Creedence Clearwater had the Gollywogs? which is a psych pop band. Um, which I don't know how much CCR you know, but that explains why Ramble Tangle goes into a psychedelic jam for 5 minutes, where otherwise they're kind of doing the rockabilly swamp stuff, right? Where's some other weird proto bands? I think that's
Somebody will have
like
to pick up those very, very early Yes albums before the Yes album, I think.
no, right, no, no, it's Genesis where their first album is like totally terrible. Like their first album was like basically unlistenable. After that they get very good very quickly, but yeah.
Or
Not my
forget. Let me
problem.
look up John Kenneth. He's got a website. I'm sure you can probably reach out to him.
There we go. I got my yes covered.
Oh, a box set of yeah. Okay, so the first album's called Yes. The next one I think is called Time in a Word. Those two I haven't heard, but I have everything from that next album down to about Union, I guess.
Okay, yeah, you
Oh,
don't
you
need
got Big
big
Generator
generator. You
there.
don't need you don't need big generator.
I
It's
have
in
Big
the set.
Generator. Well, what
Yeah.
happened was there was like remastered versions that came out like 15 years ago, and then we're in the discount bins about 10 years ago. So I grabbed them all out of discount bins.
Well, that like I said, I've been buying all of this ridiculous, like dance hall and pop music from 10 years ago, and Bruno Mars's albums, which my family now loves.
Oh, really?
I had to drive around all week listening to Bruno Mars, which is not the worst thing. Could be worse. I mean, I like him fine. So I just yeah, I'm like I like to do the lawnmower man music thing. 5 seconds in, it's like, hey, you like classical? you know, keep changing music. But they're like, no, just play all the Bruno Mars albums straight through. I'm like, okay, it's all yeah.
When I was at a public radio station back in the 80s, we had a we had like a Friday night once a month where we just went from midnight to 6 to it was just random, just whoever would come along and do it. And we had one volunteer come in. It was a Russian student, and he did a show called Russian Roulette, and it was like just Vivaldi 1 second, and then just thrash, punk rock the next second. It's just you never knew what it was going to be.
Yeah, I did my college radio, and I remember during the breaks sometimes being in a completely empty campus, not just radio station, but campus, and then sitting there for doing like a 6 hour shift. So you're completely isolated by yourself, talking to thousands of people because it was a pretty popular station. Still there, actually. It must be one of the few college stations still broadcasting.
Yeah, the trying to remember if my college had a radio station going. Oh yeah, I think the station was up and running sometime but toward the very end of my tenure there, but I was not in the radio TV department, so I never got to be on the air.
No, because I went to University of Georgia, so our station was one of the tent poles of the Athens music scene. So that's like
Oh, we
so
all know the Athens music scene gave us.
yeah. So they had the B-52s and REM playing in the lobby sometimes. When I was there, it was the late '90s, so we had all like the Elephant Six bands playing in our lobby. So which was I guess that's not a famous thing anymore, but that's good if you're into psych rock. Ever hear of Elephant
Our
Six?
elephant, no.
Okay, it was a bunch of bands. I think some of them were in like Colorado, but most of them were in Athens, Georgia. And
Oops. Hello.
yeah, I
I
don't know
lost
how.
your audio there.
Oh, really? Dun, dun. Oh, and you've frozen.
Hello.